All right, Krista back here with our Magnetic Magnificent Events YouTube channel and featuring small businesses that are changing lives. And I am excited to introduce a young lady who has been building a business that I find very, very interesting and wanted to really showcase this as kind of a new theory, a new way of doing things. And so really wanted to highlight that. So I have on here the pleasure of speaking with Kamene Bacon, and she is the relationship coach of Belief Theory, if you saw our last video. So please introduce yourself, tell people a little bit more about your title and kind of what you're passionate about.
Yes, so thank you for having me on here, Krista. So with art therapy, I know that's such a really new term and thing for a lot of people. And so with art therapy, imagine traditional therapy, but I went to school, trained and all of that, have my master's in this, in learning and knowing how to use art as a vehicle or tool in session with my clients to help them process, learn about themselves, you know, whatever the thing is that they're wanting to discover or change or fix or improve. I just use art instead of just talking with people, because what we know is, you know, in life, we all have like kind of rehearsed responses, how we answer things. We kind of know what to say, what not to say. We know how to hide things or make it kind of sound really good. But when you bring someone some, you know, markers or some clay or some, you know, paper and materials, and then have them show it to you what they are meaning, they kind of get stumped. They're like, wait, I don't really know how to do that. Right. And so it's not something that can be rehearsed or practiced. And art in general, it just taps into that other side of our brain where it goes into the subconscious, which is where you need to go to do this type of work. And so art is a really special way of bringing things out that a lot of times we didn't even know were there. And so it's typically not until someone makes the art and then they start talking or explaining why they put that on paper or what that means to them, that they then start to realize what they're learning about themselves.
And I believe while you were doing your studies and finishing your degree, and congratulations on that master's as well. But you're an artist, right? Like you actually had kind of an art business kind of going and sort of using that as your outlet before kind of merging the two.
So I actually like discovered my passion for art while I was in school. I mean, I always grew up like enjoying being creative, doing crafts, things like that. And the funny story is when I was a freshman in college, right, I did my first semester psych major. Second semester, I was like, I'm gonna throw everything out. I want to be a photographer, right? Like I was just like went all for it and just took all art classes, studio classes. And my mom was like, what did you just do? Like, I think you should go back to psychology. That's a little bit more of a stable, right? So, you know, dreams were crushed a little bit. But then as I was finishing college, for my undergrad, I learned of something called art therapy. And when I took the class, I was like, oh, I can have both worlds merged together and use art and the creative process to help people with still the psychology part. So it's kind of like this beautiful merge between the two. But yeah, so have my art business that I do also as like my passion hobby.
Okay. And now, what are the types of people that come and find you for art therapy? Do they know what they're looking for, or is it kind of they're looking for something and you sort of use that to help dive into it?
Yeah, so with art therapy, you can literally work with any type of person. I've worked with someone as young as 3 years old and someone as old as like their late 90s with dementia. Wow. So I've done a huge range of clients, you know, athletes, adults, starting now with couples, but athletes around identity. So it's really like I can use art therapy and tailor it to whatever person and situation or challenge they're going through or wanting to learn about and process, which is really cool.
That is very cool. And I know you do some stuff virtually. So do you prefer to work with people hands-on, like in the same studio, if you will, or does the virtual element still have the same effect?
So I would prefer to work in person just because you can do a little bit more like with the art. When I have my own office, like I have a bunch of like art supplies and materials, and like it still works on Zoom because that's what I have kind of had to transition to because of COVID the last, year and a half or two.
Right.
And so as long as I can either get those materials to the client or the client has some sort of, materials with them, I can still guide them through it on Zoom and virtually.
Okay. So I know you've got some like paint nights coming up, of like a paint and sip, but I'm assuming now a therapeutic element there. So is it like your classic, like we're gonna, paint by numbers sort of deal, or is it more about you guiding people into their own personal creation?
Yes, the second part. So I wanted it to be a little bit different from the traditional paint and sip where it's like, okay, we're all painting a sunset today, right? And like everyone walks away with the same photo or, somewhat similar photo. What I wanted to do is obviously have a little bit more art therapy twist to it. So I give them a prompt, which like the last one that I had for for November, it was, create an illustration of your current season of life,
Oh,
right? So like everyone has the same like direction they can go, but obviously it's going to look so much different for each person because everyone's in their own seasons of life.
yeah.
And so that's my take on it and why I call it painting with a purpose. So it's a little bit more intentional and it's something very personal to the person creating it. So that's what my paint nights are like.
I love that. Okay. Because I've done traditional paint night, and while it's a lot of fun, I can't say that I received anything deep from it. But in my mind, I am an artist. And in my mind, I could grab a canvas and paint it. Probably won't actually happen without guidance though. But I love that. And I love like deep diving into it. The biggest topic right now, I think, is people understanding mental health more and understanding traumas and understanding it, but they don't really know what to do with it,
Right.
and I raised a handful of kids and they're now in their young adult lives dealing with that. And it's like, I wish there was a better outlet to tell them, because traditional therapy, you may or may not get somewhere. It might feel good and you might explore things, but something like this just seems very intentional and a sort of different way. Do you find that people, when they're doing the art, do they open up a little bit more in ways that maybe they wouldn't if you were just doing like a traditional like session with them?
Yeah, I mean, especially with like kids, right? And it's like you have this strange adult coming to them and like, so, like, why are you so angry, right? Obviously, that's not how we say it, but it's like
Right.
that's how they take it.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I don't want to tell you anything about me. Like, who are you? And so, a lot of times when we start working with kids, and it's the same with adults too, at some level, depending on how comfortable a person is at the start, is you have that kind of like guard up that you have to like gently kind of peel down for them to trust you and feel okay to open up. And so art is also a really good buffer to use with people in the beginning where it's like, okay, cool, like I get you don't trust me and you don't want to open up yet, that's fine, let's just do this instead. Although there's still some intentionality behind it, it allows them to start kind of opening up. They start sharing a little bit about themselves, and then that's how you build the relationship to then go into like the deeper stuff.
Got it. Got it. So you've mentioned a lot of different clients. Is there anybody that is like not qualified to work with you, or that you don't prefer? Or do you kind of take everybody, or do you have like a specific type of person you like to work with?
So starting out, I was pretty much taking anybody. I believe in like sharpening my own kind of toolkit and getting the experience with any type of age or challenge that they may be experiencing. Right now, I'm specializing more into like kind of one lane where I want to go more down the route of like couples, or even if like they're in a relationship and just them wanting to work individually with me, that's also really beneficial too.
Yeah.
So really just someone who right now, someone that wants to deepen their connection with their partner, with their self,
Mhm.
building their bond, right? Like diving deeper into understanding themselves as a person so that they can be a whole person going into that or being in that relationship and really kind of having that foundation.
And that is so incredibly important. If there's one thing that I learned being married 13 years and now not, is that, not working on ourselves a lot of times is really where the hindrance is. And it sounds like this is a good route to take because it's also like a fun date night, right? You're getting creative. Like
Right.
you said, you're using the other side of your brain. But I also think there's a big like hindrance to like couples therapy. And it ends up being that my experience is that the counselor or the therapist will kind of lean in on one more than the other. It's very hard for them to be like in the middle. And it seems
Yeah.
like this activity is more like you're saying, no, bring you, but then we'll also kind of talk about how that made you to use,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And then I noticed too, you have another kind of branch. You're working with another coach doing kind of is hers also relationship based, or is that kind of like a different spin off as well?
No, so for you're talking about with Lynetta, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I partnered up with another life coach, Lynetta Marshall, and she had this program called Who Am I Really, right? And she
Okay.
had that previously that she ran last year, and that really helps the person to dive deeper into themselves and really know who they truly are. Because most people, right, they think they know who they are, but then you like go and like look at all these other like questions and things that we're bringing out, and then most people who go through it are like, wait, I actually don't know anything about myself, or like, I don't really know who I truly am.
Yeah.
And so identity was a huge topic for me when I was in grad school. That's what I did my thesis on, was identity specifically in athletes. And
Okay.
so that was already a topic that I was like honed in on. And when she had this program, she just proposed that I bring my art therapy modality into her already established program. So I kind of just added it to elevate it and give her clients another outlet or thing to, explore.
Right. And then your husband having, the belief theory and doing his thing, is there a lot of overlap merging too with some of like his clients and kind of a continuation with working with art therapy?
Yeah. So what I found is like what I truly enjoy doing is collaborating with other coaches or professionals, and
Mhm.
just seeing how I can bring art therapy into like what they're already doing with their clients as
Right.
like another thing method for them to try.
Yes.
So with his either his one-on-one clients, or we have like a group that goes on, I just kind of hop in and bring in art therapy to kind of like shake things up a little bit and give them something new to try, and
Right.
a different way of learning about themselves. So it definitely overlaps, and that's kind of like the beautiful thing about art therapy, and what I do with it is that I can like literally specialize it into whoever I'm in front of and whatever they're needing to explore.
Yeah. Do you have any like success stories coming out? Like anybody that it was like, wow, this was a really massive change for them because they discovered this? Has there been any that stuck out to you that you were like, wow, you almost didn't expect it?
I would say, I mean, like in the program that I just did with Lynetta, we had two women on there specifically that I'm thinking of that like completely accepted and welcomed trying the art therapy in the sessions, even though like one was a little bit resistant in the beginning, but once she like put her guard down, it was just like, okay, I'm gonna just try it, right? And then that's when they were really discovering like those core parts of themselves, and like it's such a fun part for me to watch, like those kind of like light bulbs come on for people where they're like, oh my gosh, like this is really cool, like art is cool, like art is fun, and it's helping me really see parts that I didn't even know were there.
Yeah.
Like I said, when they start explaining what they created and what they made or drew, then they start having those like aha moments and are like, I didn't even know like this was important to me, or things like that. So those are kind of like my bigger takeaways.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And as you were mentioning that too, I was thinking about where kind of our society is, where it's like we're very focused on, for lack of a better term, the wrong things. I feel like the majority, it's kind of like we're all just sort of going through the motions, and there's so many distractions with, it's social media and the news and all this stuff that we can absorb, that it's almost like this is like the way to break and step out, but still get more, like you said, than just like a duplicated photo or a fun, girls' night, where it's like it's purposeful and then also beneficial. And that's really why I wanted to interview you here too. Again, kind of the focus being on businesses that help people. And it's like, this is something that if somebody goes through a program with you or even does, the paint with a purpose night, it's like if they take away something from it that now betters them, that's double beneficial, right? They've got a piece they can always remember. And it's like, I'm sure with those ladies, every time they look at what they made, they're going to remember like, oh, this was a moment, this was significant. Are there any pieces of art that you particularly like to make over, like, are you more painter, clay? What's kind of your niche when it comes to personal artwork?
Yeah, I'm definitely more of a painter. That was kind of like the business that I created was called Paint by Cam. And so, that's what I started off with, like just painting with, acrylics, doing like flowers or like, sunsets, kind of like scenery things. And then kind of by accident, I stumbled upon what really took off as my main thing was making customized coasters for people.
Oh, okay.
And so, I got into what's called fluid painting, which is, you might have seen in like poured painting, like things like that. It's really gotten popular. So I basically do that, but on these like wooden coasters and then seal it with resin. And like those were like my main thing that I started creating and selling, online, or I would go to those like vendor shows and craft fairs and all that good stuff. So that's kind of my main thing is those is painting or making coasters.
So the wedding planner in me has to ask this with the coasters. Do you do like custom orders and do you ever add like words to them or is it just kind of the art colors?
I do. So I actually did one wedding. It was this past year. That was like my largest order. I think it was around like 150 coasters that were, there were two different color styles that the bride asked for. So those ones were just the paint. I have done in the past where I put either people's logos on it or I put words. I also made like these affirmation coasters. So I like had phrases on the coasters that sometimes people gave me their own that they wanted on there, or I just kind of made some on my own. So I've done all of that.
I love that. So yeah, I definitely had to ask. I've had a recent request for that. So good to know. I also have a suite of products for my own brands. I might have to add custom coasters to it to go with my wine bottles and wine glasses, right? Now it's a whole thing.
Yes, absolutely.
So if somebody wanted to reach out to you to do either like a one-on-one or actually, do you ever do like a girls group, but they're clearly working on paint and therapy? Like, do you do that in a group setting or is it better for somebody to do more of a one-on-one?
Yeah, I do both, one-on-one or group. And it just really depends on the person. There's benefits to both and depending on like what they want. So with the paint night specifically, like obviously that's more fun with group because you got everyone kind of feeding off of each other. But for doing just like either the relationship coaching or in art therapy stuff, it could be one-on-one or like we have those group programs and things like that. So it just depends on the person and what they're looking for.
Cool. And if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what would be the best way? What's the best way to reach you or stay connected?
So my Instagram is belieftheory_art.
Okay.
Facebook is just my name, Kamene Rose Bacon, and email kamene@belieftheory.com.
Okay. Awesome. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time out. I think this was so much fun. And it was more for me. I didn't know what art therapy was, although I do plan on partaking in some of it. I'd love to see what I come up with that like after all the work that is personally being done, it's like this is another angle where we can even take it up a notch. So definitely appreciate you. Well, thank you so much. It was definitely a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time out and look forward to sharing with everybody. And until next time, stay magnificent.